tell me to bring my own music stand. Okay. Wow. Do you all appreciate living here every single day? And being in this neighborhood, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. Steep, but beautiful. Texas, I live in what we call the Texas Hill Country, but they're not like this. I have loved it. And is it my imagination, or does Roma love being on stage? Where did she get that? You know, every Unity church is different and every minister is different, but you've got one of the good ones. So here's a question. Are any of you going through some kind of transition in your life? A change? Maybe someone you've heard about is going through a change. I know you've heard that when one door closes, another one opens, but it can be hell in the hallway. You're in the hallway when something has changed. You know your life will never be quite the same, but you don't know what's coming next. Does that sound familiar at all? Yeah. Okay. I first talked about the hallway years ago, and I was astounded by the reaction. People were so grateful just to have a name for what they were going through. They would come up to me and say, "Yes, I'm in the hallway. Now I know." And they were grateful to be assured there is light at the door. So if you think about transition in your life as a hallway, it falls naturally into three parts. What put you in the hallway, what do you do while you're there, and how do you get out? Notice that getting out is not the first thing to work on. A lot of bad decisions can be made in a panic to feel better. But let's come back to that. What puts you in the hallway could be the death of a loved one. Adjusting to life after loss is a hallway. Divorce, losing a job, going bankrupt, becoming a caregiver leads you into the unknown. Sometimes a door slams suddenly. You get a phone call with terrible news or a scary diagnosis, and everything has changed. Sometimes a door creaks shut. You know your child will be leaving home, or you're planning to retire. When you know it's coming, there's a hallway on the way to an event, and then another hallway of adjustment after it happens. Some hallways are chosen. Anytime you change jobs, move to a new city, you're in a place of uncertainty, and it can be uncomfortable even though you chose it. I chose the hallway when I left my job as a reporter to go to ministerial school. And I was terrified most of the time, even though I knew it was the right path for me. But that was a long period of uncertainty. Some hallways are entirely within you. In Unity, we call this divine restlessness. You know there's something more, something's got to give, you just don't know what yet. You really are being called higher spiritually, but it can feel like wandering in the wilderness. Entire groups can go through hallways together, like an office staff that's waiting to hear who gets laid off, or who the new boss will be. Cities where there's been a mass shooting or a natural disaster. Where I live in Wimberley, Texas, we had a devastating flood on Memorial Day weekend 2 years ago. Homes were destroyed, 2 families were swept away by the river. And life in our town changed for everyone, all of us together. One couple in my church spent a year rebuilding their home. Another hasn't returned home yet. There's also a type of hallway I didn't realize until people started telling me I was leaving one out. Call it the endless hallway. I hear about it from families where someone is mentally ill, or maybe a child has Down syndrome. I mean, caregiving itself is a long hallway, but for most people it will eventually end, even sadly. But for some, it's just endless. The situation won't ever change or get better in their lifetimes. And the only door to be opened is within, to find peace and acceptance. It's sad, isn't it? There are so many stories and so much loss in people's lifetimes. I encourage you to feel whatever you feel in the hallway. Feel it now or dredge it up in therapy 10 years from now. yes, I know it hurts, and yes, your life might never be the same. And no, you don't know what the future holds. But if you can, lean into the pain. And I know that's easier said than done. But people who move through the hallway successfully move through the pain. There's no way around it. You have to become willing to be uncomfortable in the interest of your own spiritual growth. It's tempting, though, just to look for the first doorway out. I said we'd come back to this. Getting out is not the first thing to work on. So let me tell you a story. I worked at Unity of Dallas with a wonderful minister named John Webster. Tall, white-haired, handsome. He handled most of the pastoral care, so he did counseling and visited the sick and prayed with people on the phone. John was about 80 when he wrote his hallway story for me. Still working. He knew when I was working on the book, and I still have his story. He wrote it in block print on notebook paper. It starts long before the death of before he was a minister, with the death of his first wife. She died 2 days before John's 40th birthday. And he had 2 girls at home and a job in the insurance industry that required him to travel all the time. He didn't know what to do. It was a really uncomfortable hallway. So what did he decide? He got married again as soon as he could. Someone to cook and clean and take care of those children. And years later he said he'd really been looking for a housekeeper. And that's how he treated her. That marriage lasted a year. But he tried again. This was now his 3rd marriage, lasted 8 years, and during that time he felt he did a lot of damage to his relationship with his younger daughter, who was still at home. Then he started learning about the spiritual principles we teach in Unity, and he was able to start changing his life from the inside out, which is what we learn to do. He married one more time, happily. He healed his relationship with his daughter eventually. And he served and taught and uplifted so many people until his death a few years ago. John learned there's no quick way out of the hallway, and the discomfort can be intense. There's a spiritual author I like named Mirabai Starr. Her 14-year-old daughter was killed in a car accident. And Mirabai called her time in the hallway a period of radical unknowingness. But she vowed to the daughter who died, I will honor you by not turning away from this fire of grief. This fire of grief. Every hallway includes some grief because something has been lost. So feel whatever you feel. Remember to let other people support you. We will all be in a hallway at times, so we can support each other. Okay, something got you into the hallway, now what do? Actually, the early hallway is a terribly vulnerable time, not only because your life has changed, but because it's so easy to beat yourself up. Why didn't I see this coming? Why didn't I take better care of my health? Why wasn't I more careful with money? And sometimes, how could God let this happen? But you see how we create our own hell in the hallway with our thoughts? Of course it doesn't have to be hell. It can be a time of visioning infinite possibilities. But that might not be your first reaction. It's important to know that the spiritual work of the hallway does not depend on the circumstances that put you there. Now, it's true that not all problems are the same. Death is different from divorce, is different from job loss. And eventually you will address the specific circumstances of your hallway, like looking for another job. But turns out the spiritual work is the same, no matter the circumstances. Spiritual principles are simple but not easy. No matter how long you've been a student of truth, no matter how long you've been on this spiritual path, the question is, how's your life working? People ask me about advanced spiritual laws. They've read the 5 principles and they want to know, okay, what's next? What are the more advanced principles? I'm sorry. The laws are the law. The advanced courses, that curriculum is provided by your own life when you apply the same basic principles to new and different situations. So when I talk about the principles of the hallway, they're probably things you already know. You'll just get to apply them in whatever hallway you're in. So the work of the hallway starts with acceptance. You see that a door has closed and latched, so you turn around and look at where you are now. Oh, I'm in the hallway. My life really has changed. That means I'm going to have to change. So here is my gentle suggestion to help you accept whatever has happened. Just consider this is not happening to you, it's happening for you. What shows up in your life is there for a reason, and somehow it's for your highest good, for your soul's growth. And for me, that shifts the question. Okay, if this is happening for me, then where is the good? What gifts is this bringing? And you may see the good in small ways at first. In the friends who check on you, in the love you feel from others, in the depth of your own prayers. And the good won't stop. Everything that happens in your life brings gifts and answers your soul's deepest desires. Even if you see no rhyme or reason why it happened, every life event is an opportunity to connect more closely with God. A woman named Brenda is one of, actually, several people I know who have been through cancer and who said later, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I wouldn't trade the spiritual growth it brought me. She says for a long time after she was diagnosed with breast cancer, she was stuck in why me? Because she already believed we create our own reality. Why would she have created this? And about 4 weeks into chemo, she woke up one day and realized, if I'm going to heal this, I have to take responsibility for creating it. Now listen, that doesn't mean she wanted cancer. It doesn't mean she sat around thinking about cancer until she got it. It also doesn't mean that she quit all her treatments to just affirm and meditate herself well. Taking responsibility was about becoming a co-creator with God, consciously drawing on the one presence and power within her to change what she could. So she would ask herself every day, am I really being positive? Am I really taking care of myself? Am I listening to messages from my body? She put her spiritual tools to work. She released the outcome. She focused on each day, making a point to appreciate every moment. She said if she could get from the bed to the sofa that day, she was grateful. And she felt compassion for every person she met. Brenda got well, but even if she hadn't, living in appreciation and compassion is pretty much the highest spiritual plane we can attain as human beings. I was surprised by how many people who told me about going through a physical illness said they had to take responsibility for getting well, for creating their own health. And notice how Brenda said she let go of the outcome. Acceptance leads to surrender. Our pain is in the resistance. It's in saying, this is not how things should be. For me, surrender means giving up the stubborn belief that life should be fair or make sense in any given moment. Now, I don't believe you always have to hit bottom to surrender. Surrender is feeling a sense of peace and trusting that all is well no matter how things turn out. And you can choose to believe that anytime, over and over if necessary. So acceptance, this is the way things are now. And surrender, all is well even if I can't see it. There is good here for me. Another spiritual tool to use in the hallway is forgiveness. No matter what put you in the hallway, you probably have someone to forgive. The boss who fired you, the spouse who walked out, maybe a doctor missed an early diagnosis, the parent who needed so much care at the end. The Greek word for forgive means to untie the knot. We have to untangle ourselves from the past in order to move forward. Now, you know forgiving does not condone the act. There's a story in the book about a woman who forgave the man who raped her, a stranger. It was not okay for him to do what he did, and she's glad he's in prison. But she also knew it was not okay for her to hate the rest of her life. She didn't want one event or one sick man to control the rest of her life. So gradually, over time, she forgave him. She didn't even realize she'd forgiven until one day she took a bunch of teddy bears to the Rape Crisis Center and didn't feel anything. She had forgiven. She was healed. She was free. Forgiveness frees you. And then, of course, prayer is a crucial part of the whole way. One man who was in a coma for nearly 2 months said later he could feel the prayers for him. And he described it like a bottlenose dolphin might nudge a drowning man toward the surface of the water. So I can offer you 2 spiritual prayers for your work in the hallway. I guess all prayers are spiritual. I can offer you 2 prayers for your spiritual work in the hallway. My mother, the English teacher, would say that was a misplaced modifier. Don't show it. So I will warn you, these prayers are powerful. The first one is, reveal what needs to be revealed and heal what needs to be healed. You can spend the rest of your life working on what comes out of that prayer. Reveal what needs to be revealed and heal what needs to be healed. And then the other one is, lead me where you need me and speak to me in ways I cannot possibly misunderstand. That's a brave prayer. And watch what happens. Okay, lead me where you need me and speak to me in ways I cannot possibly misunderstand. Almost asking for a 2x4. But if you're listening, it doesn't have to go that far. And if your life is like mine, you will end up in unexpected places doing things you never thought you could. So see, your time in the hallway is never wasted. Use it for growth and learning. It can become a pivot point for your life. But what everyone wants to know is, how do you get out? Well, let me ask you first, are you sure you want out? The hallway can become really comfortable. Some people install carpet conditioning and just stay there. Because you might be getting lots of sympathy and attention there. You might be stuck in telling your story. It's become your identity. Or you might feel guilty about moving on. My friend Judith, the woman in my church, said after her husband died, what if I get to the end of the hallway and forget him? That doesn't happen. But she was afraid that creating a new life for herself would mean losing him. Leaving the hallway also requires some decisions, like answering the question, what do you want? Because you are the creator of your experience, and you get to design your life, always. Now, this doesn't mean your life will ever be the same as it was. And I'm not saying you just forget about whatever happened and go blithely on. A grief counselor named Megan Devine says, some things in life cannot be fixed. They can only be carried. But your life will go on, and you will create what happens next. You can't not create with your thoughts. That's the law. So you might as well do it deliberately. And here's what I know for sure about leading the hallway. Consciousness shifts first. And by consciousness, I mean your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. They may be conscious or unconscious, but they rise to a new level. They expand into new awareness. You might not see a change in your circumstances yet, but life starts to feel different. You might notice you're looking forward more now than you're looking back. And you start to ask yourself, what do I want? This is where you get to pull out all the fun spiritual tools. You can write a vision for your life in the next few years. You can imagine your new life. You can set intentions and let the universe figure out how to make it happen. When I coach people, it's mostly about how to get out of the hallway, how to design a life you would love from now on. And that's what we'll focus on in the workshop this afternoon, creating the life you would love. Now, I'm very aware that I'm saying you can create a life you love after I just told you to surrender and let go of the outcome. It's both and. The spiritual path is full of paradoxes. Our job is to create the conditions for abundant life. It's just like preparing a garden and planting seeds. We're not in control of how the soil, sun, and rain combine to bring those seeds out of the ground and turn them into flowers or vegetables, but we create the conditions for that flowering, and we decide decide which seeds to plant. Joseph Campbell said, "When you follow your bliss, doors will open. Where you would not have thought there would be doors, and where there wouldn't be a door for anyone else." That's the power of your intention. Ideas and money will materialize. Exactly the right people will show up to help you. Doors will open. Most of the time. There's a whole chapter in the book called, "Why Isn't It Working?" One woman said, "What if you try to follow your bliss and your bliss doesn't want you?" Isn't that sad? You probably can expect delays in the hallway. Now, sometimes everything falls together so fast it makes your head spin. But delays can be a form of guidance. Sometimes a delay gives you time to realize you're asking for the wrong things. There's really something else you want. Or maybe a delay is necessary to line up the people and circumstances you need. And of course, delays can be caused by the blocks in us, the thoughts and beliefs that hold our good at bay. Blocks like fear and unworthiness. So don't worry if the process is slow. Consciousness has to shift first. Inner change precedes outer change. That's why we do all this spiritual work in the hallway, so we can open the next door onto what we really, truly want. My friend Judith, who was afraid that leaving the hallway would mean forgetting her husband, she finally went through all the sad and lonely feelings she'd been trying to avoid. I'll tell you that story this afternoon. But when she got through it, she decided to let the universe know what she wanted. And what she wanted was another man in her life. Never mind that she was 75. And so one day, a guy she'd known in high school called and said he was going to be in the area. They had dated a bit back in high school. They went to the junior prom together. Turned out he'd never forgotten her. And he wasn't going to be in the area. He was coming to the area because he knew she was single again. I performed their wedding on their back porch 2 years ago. And when they sent out the wedding invitations, it had an old black and white picture of the two of them as teenagers, all dressed up for their junior prom, 59 years earlier. Sometimes you experience delays while the pieces are moved into place. So the hallway's a busy time in your life. It might start with panic, blame, shame, anger, fear, but eventually comes acceptance. This is where I am now. And surrender. This must be happening for me, so I'll look for the good. I know God is in every situation. And then use your spiritual practices, forgiveness, prayer. Let others pray for you. You can borrow their faith. And when you're ready to move forward, invoke the spiritual laws you know. You will live either by design or default. It's worth it to stay awake, to pay attention, to use all the spiritual tools at your disposal to create the life you want. Knowing that there may be delays or surprises, and even those have divine purpose. There are no victims, only volunteers. Our souls volunteered for spiritual growth in this human lifetime, and our hallways are opportunities for that growth. Just remember one basic principle. God is in every circumstance. Good is in every circumstance. And your good is waiting behind the next door. Thank you so much for having me.